Sunday Live is here with the Average Joe Sports Show. Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, the voice of Husker Volleyball, John Baylor from his study.
Yes.
Chris Schmidt here to just stay out of the way. And
why does he not have the smoking jacket on?
Yeah.
Why does he not have the JB? You should have dressed as when you used to have Boxing Day parties.
Nice. Those are great when we were single, but people stopped attending after they all hooked up.
Yeah, that was the problem with those parties.
I love going to shows where I lower the average IQ.
JB, where did you get the Boxing Day tux? Because it was glorious. That plaid coat you had.
My dad got it at one Christmas year. He couldn't find his regular tux, so we went and bought it at Ben Simon's and in downtown Lincoln. And my dad and both my brothers and I always wore the same size. So when my dad passed away, I inherited it, and I could still fit in it. I love it. Age 18 to my current age, no problem.
That is awesome.
It's a little tight. I don't want to go like this too fast because it could go in the back. But hey, fashion doesn't make the man, but it doesn't hurt.
I love it. Bill Doleman, show everybody your T-shirt.
As I just said a moment ago, I am here for one reason, and one reason only today, and that is to hammer the grammar.
Nice. It's a motto to live by.
You see that?
I love it. Can you just sit backwards for the whole show, Bill, and we'll go full screen?
And you too can be an advertiser with the Average Joe Sports Show.
Oh. Do we know somebody?
JB's like, gotta go. Love you all. Thanks. We'll get our starting five shout outs going here in the stream, but we always do the Sunday Live Average Joe Sports Show at 10:30 on YouTube, 7 days a week with the Average Joe Sports Show. Of course, the weekend edition, 7:45-ish. Hope you caught that. Check it out on the Average Joe Sports Show YouTube channel or Spotify or iTunes, 4 to 6 on KFOR and around the state. And we try to bring, we kind of kicked things off with this Sunday Live. We've kind of morphed into a special guest, and we are excited, JB, to have you on and just kind of shoot the bull, talk some sports.
I like
have some fun that way, man.
Shoot the cow, shoot the bull. You should be called the Iron Man of radio, Schmitty. If I were your agent, I would negotiate a paid by the syllable contract.
I guess I should look at the agent thing, but I haven't. I'm just happy to be along for the ride. But a lot going on. Husker baseball trying to lick their wounds. Bad one yesterday. It is senior day for Alexis Markowski. And Husker women's basketball today at 2:00 at PBA. And we should pool our resources and get Tom Osborne a birthday gift today.
Wow.
86?
88.
Oh, wow.
I want to hear some Bill Doleman, Tom Osborne stories before this show is over.
Director's cut, JB. Director's cut.
You're right. Schmitty doesn't have enough airtime as is.
He's the most intimidating guy I've ever interviewed.
Yeah.
Say more.
Because one, I didn't grow up here, but once you get boots on the ground, you understand the impact of Nebraska football. And of course I knew who Tom Osborne was. I followed it from afar. But JB will remember this. I don't know that he was there, but John and I both were at Broadcast House together in our infancy. And T.O. came in to do his coach's show. And I didn't realize he was that tall. But he had a presence, and you were like, oh, my gosh, there's Tom Osborne. Well, the person that was supposed to host the show that night was not there. So it was me hosting the T.O. show on the radio. And T.O. would do that show where he would pay attention to the callers, but he just kind of wanted to get through the hour. But what he would do, he would sit there and he would design plays. So he'd have a piece of paper in front. Oh, yeah. This is a story. I'm going to take John back. So he left one night and he left his plays that he had designed during the hour show in the studio. So we were all talking. We're like, well, what do we do with these?
Well, do we keep them? A midget football team that went undefeated the rest of that season thanks to those plays.
But he left his plays, and we're like, what do we do here with him? Do we like call coach up and say, hey, we got something for you? Do we call his secretary and say, hey, we got to drop something off? I think coach was designing some plays.
You called Oklahoma. I remember.
No,
I kept him. I framed him. I sold him on eBay for a spring break trip. But he coaches. I just saw Coach recently, and he walked in, and I didn't realize he was that tall, and he has this presence, and you're like, oh my gosh, there is Tom Osborne. And still to this day, whenever you run into Coach, you're like, that's Tom Osborne. So happy birthday to him, 88.
Well, I want to hear Bill Doleman's stories, but I'm going to tell a couple of quick ones here. One is no one gives a press conference like Tom Osborne. Well, fellas, I hope this Saturday we can compete. I just hope our guys play well. And I don't know about the rankings. You guys know a lot more about that than I do, but hope Saturday we can have a good game. First question, Coach, you're a 7-touchdown favorite over K-State on Saturday. How long are you going to play the starters? Well, you guys know a lot better.
At which time, if you're talking about the Kansas State game, he'd always say, well, Vince Gibson always had some pretty good games back in the early 1970s. He just didn't quite get the
if you had a drinking game with every Vince Gibson mention at a Tom Osborne K-State press conference, by lunch you couldn't see straight.
Then he'd slip in a Chuck Fairbanks.
Yeah. No, who's the Missouri coach he always brought up?
Woody Woodenhofer, Al Onofrio,
Dan Devine.
His ex-assistant who beat him twice.
Oh, Warren Powers.
Yeah.
I don't know why they ever let Warren Powers go. I thought he had a good thing going there. We struggled to get. I loved it.
JB, I remember the John Baylor show on KFOR from noon to 3. Loved it. Special guests,
Rest
Henry
in peace
Hill.
To the point.
Yeah. Henry Hill. Shane Osborne is still with us. Karl Rove,
Wow.
The White House press secretary. I forget who it was under the W administration, but get a call to my cell phone. Yeah, this is so and so at the White House. Like, what I do?
Ari Fleischer.
Yeah. Yes, Ari was on, and then Tom Osborne, in his first congressional run, was sitting front and center with John Baylor. And while he was drawing up plays during the Gary Sharp interview, no notes from T.O. when it comes to policy, an hour with you.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be an hour. I think maybe I'm conflating your story with the time he was running for governor, so clearly I didn't help him. But he was supposed to be on for 1 hour, and he stayed for 2. And 2/3 of the time, I'm like, all right, you decide to go for 2. Let's walk through that. He's the best. Absolutely. Oh, this one time I spoke after him. Oh my gosh, I don't know how this ever happened.
Good luck.
So I spoke after him. He was just doing a little teammates pitch. Then I go up and I walk up. I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. You just heard from the greatest college football coach in the history of the sport. And now you're going to hear from a guy who pound for pound was one of the most solid JV football players in high school you've ever seen, but unfortunately had more sweatbands than tackles. But anyway.
All I remember is whenever Tom would call, which wasn't frequent and really pre-cell phone, but when you pick up the phone and you hear, hello, Bill, this is Tom Osborne, you shoot up like that mannequin in Ferris Bueller when you open the door. I mean, it is immediately you are up and you are at him and you are wherever you needed to be at any moment. I remember when they first called me to see if I'd be interested in working some of his coaches shows with Husker Vision and eventually the big coaches show in the mid 90s when we went 16-3 and won 3 national titles. I'm not going to say there's a correlation, but you can.
That's a nice flex.
Yeah. I tell my students that all the time. So they call like at 7 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning, and I'm like not even rolling over for the first time, right? I probably went to bed at 6, and I get a call. Yeah, this is Mary Lynn in Coach Osborne's office. Coach Osborne would like you to join us for a meeting at 8:00. And I mean, it was everything I could do to get there. Parking spot opens up like the Red Sea and Moses, and the Park South Stadium went up, and that was that meeting. I'd known him from when I worked in the sports information office as a student assistant, and my Devaney stories are better. But I agree with you, Gary. Even to this day, there is that I need to sit up a little more.
Yeah,
take my hat off inside, and you would see that too. Back in the days when the training tables and in the lower level concourse in the stadium, he could walk through the training table and you would see swimmers and gymnasts and wrestlers and everybody just kind of sit up a little bit more because Tom was walking through it. And he didn't have that attitude, but he had the air about him.
Yeah.
And, not talking about him in past tense. Let's be clear here. Just having some fun on his birthday. But it was an amazing experience to meet him for the first time when I was a student. And I think the first time I actually had a conversation with him, I was asked by my bosses, Don Bryant, to go down and do ask a question for a magazine. And so I needed to go to Coach Osborne and say, well, what do you think of the job Bobby Bowden has done, or something like that. And there's an elevator from the first floor down to where the locker room was. And so I get on and I've got to go find Tom Osborne. And, that was, an amazing assignment in its own right. I opened the door and he's doing sit-ups right in front of the elevator door. And I almost stepped on it. And I said, Coach, I need to ask you a question for a magazine. Okay, what magazine are you with?
Every moment counts.
Go upstairs. They just told me to ask you this question. So
here's my name tag.
He's still a symbol of the state. When I talk to people outside the state, on occasion, when they discover that I'm from this exotic location called Nebraska, I'd say half the time they go, and who's that head coach you had all those years?
Yeah.
Tom Osborne. And there's always this nod of appreciation and respect. And it's been almost 30 years.
If you guys had one question that you could ask T.O. right now, what would it be? I have mine that I think I'm going to ask it if I get a chance to interview him the next time.
Mine. When you were an AD and you were replacing Callahan, did it ever cross your mind to name yourself?
That's my question.
That's my question.
No, that's my question. I think you and I have talked about it.
Okay.
So, we were all shocked at that December press conference in '97 when he announces that that's it. I mean, it was so uncomfortable in that room because you got players that are in tears. You're chasing a national championship. You're handing the reins over to Frank, and you're like, what happened?
Yeah, he's 657. What was he, 58, 59?
Yeah, I mean, compared to some coaches that are in the game now, T.O. got out early, but I'm with you, JB. I want to ask that question. Like when he got the call to come and sit in the power chair in 07, I wonder if the call would have been, hey, can you return to the field? Yeah. If he would have said yes. Because he'd had some time off. The game hadn't changed that much. And he loves Nebraska. I wonder if he would have thought about that. To go downstairs instead of upstairs.
And it would have been 2 years, name as associate head coach, who's going to take over. He could have even been upstairs just running the offense, but be the head coach. I think it didn't even cross my mind at the time, but then Bill Snyder, remember that, names himself the year later. And Bill Snyder's 2 years younger. That's when I'm like, oh my goodness. Anyway, Bill.
I'm trying to think as I adjust my microphone. And as I've had time to think, now I've got about 5 of them. Why didn't you run the option on that 2-point conversion in my
good question
throwing? But I'm not going to go there.
Don't
Okay?
go there.
I'm not going to go there. But I too have more of an AD question. What was it what was your hunch? What was your instinct that when Missouri started saber rattling, that they were going to go to the Big Ten Conference in 2000? What was that? I think it was 2009 that Missouri started saying, yeah, we're probably going to go to the Big Ten. And it wasn't until a year later or so, or the 6 months later, that that Nebraska was on its way to the. I used to know the timeline like almost by heart, but Missouri started saber rattling and saying we're going to go to the Big Ten if asked. I mean, the governor talked about it, their athletic director at the time, but the Big Ten had no interest in Missouri. So what was it in your instinct and mind that it was time to reach out to Jim Delaney or to take Jim Delaney's phone call about Nebraska? Because they were launching the Big Ten network, and I think it had already launched, but Nebraska was going to give it some more national traction. But what was the instinct that we need to move forward with this and get Nebraska out of the Big 12?
I know this from Jim Delaney because we interviewed him right after the reception and pomp and circumstance that was on, East Campus. Hey, welcome Nebraska. Jim Delaney's there. We had him on the next morning on our Saturday show, and he pretty much said, look, we need to ask you. You can't politic to us. And the math on that was Missouri made a mistake by going and speaking out about how, we're tight with the Big Ten. We're a good fit with the Big Ten. We're going to get a phone call from the Big Ten. And that infuriated Jim Delaney.
Interesting.
And I think the light bulb went off where, all right, let's back channel this thing. Barry, I need to give you a shout. T.O. to Barry, Barry to Jim, Jim to T.O. Or Jim Delaney to Barry, Barry to T.O. Barry says, T.O., you need to call Jim.
Wow.
I mean, that's kind of.
I remember the governor
hostage
of Missouri stepped in it because he came out publicly about how it was going to happen. And then the president of the Penn State system, who had been at Nebraska, was instrumental. Graham Spanier was instrumental as well. But yeah, the Nebraska way, do it humbly, not boastfully. And there'll be plenty of time to write chapter and verse what happened after the fact. Before then, just.
But the way Nebraska went about doing it, and it doesn't happen if it's not Tom Osborne. And I mean, if Sean Eichhorst had been the athletic director, Steve Peterson had been the athletic director, even with Harvey Perlman, who was on all kinds of NCAA committees and all that, this was Jim and Tom not having a scotch in a cabin in Asheville, North Carolina, or wherever it is, where the secrets were discussed. I mean, that's an intriguing time. And look, if that doesn't happen, if not for Jim Delaney's respect for Tom Osborne and Tom having some, instincts about where this was going with the Big Ten, and look, those roots were deep back to 1995 when Texas took over the Big Eight. If not for those two men, it doesn't happen. And look, people can talk about Nebraska not having success in the Big Ten all they want. That's just maybe football centric, but Nebraska, as JB knows, has been, with Wisconsin carrying volleyball. Nebraska's won track titles. Basketball's been exciting. Nebraska in so many areas, but it's been the best move for Nebraska.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and right now on the cusp of whatever the SEC and the Big Ten are planning on doing from here on out, the Big 12 is still on the outside looking in, minus Texas and Oklahoma.
We're in a conference that Stanford begged to get into. Nebraska was in a conference basically deciding whether Stanford could enter or not. That's the position that Tom Osborne put us in. The financial benefits, it has been at least an extra $10 million a year, probably closer to 20 every year, as opposed to having stayed back in the lower conference. And I think you can't put a price on the branding. Being in the Big Ten is just different from being back in the old Big 12.
It goes from border to border. I mean, you got teams that are in Los Angeles and New York City.
Those ads. You've seen those ads, like the pop up stuff on the West Coast, and then Rutgers pops up. It's like, and they only play it like every second break on every college football.
Would you like me to sing the song?
Yeah, that's right. It's very helpful to remind myself. That's right, Purdue. West Lafayette. Appreciate it. Can't wait for another 8 minutes. I can see it again.
JB right now head in palms because the timeout's been called, and here comes a commercial.
Yeah. Oh my God. That, and then I got to see my latest Progressive insurance break, and then I got to see the Gecko again. Like no wonder insurance costs are so freaking high. I got to make sure I subsidize all of this stuff that's being played during every commercial break. Holy smokes! Oh, Liberty Mutual, forgot about that one. The
John,
what do you got against Emo?
Running around, I got no idea what's happening in there. Anyway. Sorry.
John Baylor is with us, the Sunday Live Average Joe Sports Show.
Every JB mentioned gets a
Nice.
Like and subscribe.
HG.
Like and subscribe to the Average Joe Sports Show YouTube 7 days a week. Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Chris Schmidt, John Baylor. We're having a little fun with T.O.'s 88th birthday. My T.O. story's not as cool as your guys's. Drawing plays, running for governor. Bill, can you step into my office and host my show? But I'd run into Coach at where we work out, and he doesn't go there much anymore. This is probably 10, 12 years ago where he was more frequent, and he had his oldest, I shouldn't say oldest, but his youngest grandson was playing high school ball. So this is probably 7 to 10 years ago, and T.O.'s there, and he's got the towel around his neck tucked into his shirt, and he's doing the weight circuit thing where he's just cranking out bench, he's cranking out curls, and then he's like just ripping bounce passes to his grandson to work on post moves. And then he's wandering over to the rowing machine, and then that head tilt that we're all familiar with, as it's New Year's Day, and he's watching 3rd and 8, and you could just see that twinkle where he's turning and he's looking at. Wonder what they're going to run on 3rd and 8. He stops to look, and he kind of has that lean. And I had a chance a few times in my life to run into him and just kind of say, "All right, Coach, good to see you again." And yeah. So we smile and wish T.O. a happy birthday today.
2 quick things. One, and Bill might actually have been involved with this. I think one of the best things that Husker Vision ever did, and this is in the early days of Husker Vision. This is T.O.'s last game in the Orange Bowl against Tennessee. They had the communication mic'd up between him and Frank from the field to the booth. And I thought it was fascinating how T.O. looked at a game, because Nebraska, he would call plays, and Nebraska hadn't even run first down yet. And he was already on to second down, because he was like, Frank, I think this is going to get 4 yards. This is what we should run on 2nd and 6. And Nebraska hadn't even snapped the ball on first down. Like he really, T.O. was Mr. Analytics before analytics even became part of our jargon. Like he would tell you, what, if we return a kickoff to this particular yard line, we have a 60% chance of scoring a touchdown, compared to if we only get it back to the 20, we only have like a 30%. Like he was thinking that way. But I thought that was fascinating that the whole game, they had T.O. and Frank, their communication mic'd up. So you could hear also how much respect Frank had for T.O. and vice versa, but just them going through the plays. And then the other one, most recently, so Jeremiah Jones committed to Nebraska in this most recent recruiting class, and he's a big-time pickup for Nebraska, but he got here on campus, and, they're taking him on his visit, and he meets, everything you do on your visit. He meets his position coaches, but they start talking about fishing, and Rule is not a fisherman. And so they're like, we have the perfect person for you. So they called up Coach Osborne, and Jeremiah Jones and another player that was on campus on a visit. They went fishing one afternoon with Coach Osborne.
He's got his own pond in his backyard.
That's where. So they called him up and they said, "Hey, we got a couple of recruits on campus. They love fishing. We don't really know where to go. Is there any way that they could come to your house and go fishing?" And so not only come to their house, but Coach Osborne is out on the pond and he's helping them. And they caught like a bass and bluegill. And so Jeremiah Jones, who, remember that name, he's going to be a really good player in Nebraska. He brings that up, that one of the things that he committed to Nebraska is the attention, and like they showed to him, and the fact that he ut to meet Coach Osborne. He didn't know who Coach Osborne was. Now you got an 87-year-old gentleman who is helping you, put a bait on your pole, and he's out there fishing with you. I mean, how about that story?
Now, Ron Brown always says Coach Osborne was 5 plays ahead of the game.
That's wild.
5 plays ahead of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. But after they got done fishing, he patted him on the shoulder and said, "Okay, that about do you?"
The rest are for me. My question to T.O. would be how, well, not how, but why do you think you are able to keep for the most part, all of your assistants together for 25 years? I mean, you look at the who's who and you look at coaching staffs today where, I think we're all pretty excited about the new look staff that Rule's put together as he heads into year 3 with some talented assistants. You had your own level of head coach, except they were all at position coaches or your coordinators. Clearly you had T.O. running the offense, but you had Dan and Milt crushing it on the offensive line. You had Tony and Uncle Charlie with the defensive line, the lines of scrimmage prioritized, each with 2 coaches to pay attention to it. At your secondary, your linebacker, you had guys that were assistant head coach to head coach worthy at about 100 different places, yet they all stayed.
George Darlington is still ticked off. His alma mater, Rutgers, every 3 years when it changed coaches, never gave him a phone call. And I'm with him. Coach, you were mistreated. That was an injustice. George Darlington could have come home to New Jersey, and they really would have been a metropolitan New York product that people would have cared about. Stupid.
He got out of West Virginia to go to Rutgers under one of Lombardi's coaches. That's who coached him at Rutgers. And I smile with George and see him. But that's my thought is, how did you get all these guys to stick and stay? I mean, you had Charlie taking calls from the NFL to go coach up there. You had Coach Ron Brown, of course, getting called every week by Florida State, it would feel like. And then Dan and Young. Yeah.
Lincoln had Wilderness Park, Gateway Mall, the Haymarket was rolling.
Miller and Payne.
It's a magnet.
Well, I mean, you could say, hey, T.O., why did you stay in the late 70s when you had a chance to leave? He kept Frank around. Frank had a chance to go to Kansas to be the head coach there, and he kept him around. I mean, it was just, for all of us, and we're all in the quad box here, it was incredible to experience that run at the end. I mean, we got spoiled. We got spoiled so much. We're never going to have that again, a run like that in college football. But I mean, we were spoiled. That was the best of the best.
Here's how spoiled we were. These were the big 3 controversies in the 90s. Okay, these big. Think of the controversies we have going on now. 1, should the first teamers be allowed to play beyond the midpoint of the first quarter? Number 2, is it okay to boo these kids at halftime? And number 3, are the running backs overlifting? Other programs are like, how do we stay within 20 points? We're like, all right, we tweak the lift. Like, what's going on with the running backs? There's like, unbelievable.
Gary brings up that highlight video, and that was the brainchild of Jeff Schmall, who started Husker Vision with a little band of a few of us that were trying to help a brother out. But that was his brainchild, and he had to talk to Tom and broach it. And I think Tom obviously gave into it and understood. But it is some of the most telling video or audio that you can hear, because and I've always said, when people ask me what Tom was like behind the scenes, or when he wasn't on the show or on the side, same guy on, same guy off. What you got on is the same guy he was. Total 100% character and man of integrity. But to listen to him in that game, have the dialogue that he had with his coaches, never swearing, and Ron Brown loves to point that out. Never swearing. When Scott Frost fumbled late in the first half, it was like, dadgummit, Scott, okay, come here. This is what you need to do. And there wasn't cussing, there wasn't cursing, there wasn't exploding anger or anything like that. But just to listen to that dialogue of a man at work, and the way he interacted with his coaches, and you could tell in their voices, and it's kind of leading because I was there, but the reverence and respect that they had for him, it was truly amazing because, yeah, you're right. They had opportunities to go, and the reason why they didn't was because in this era where we talk so much about work-life balance and healthy boundaries and all that and mental health, Tom allowed those guys, even though they were working 70-hour, 80-hour weeks, they still had some semblance of a home life and a balance with work. Okay, go to church on Sunday morning, but come in at noon and we're going to work and we'll watch video. But there was that time that nobody slept in their office, right? I mean, they got to go home. They got to go to, the kids' events if they could. And, I had coaches tell me, man, there's guys coming up from the Kansas staff, the Oklahoma staff, whatever staff they're going, you guys going to have any openings? I got to get out of here. I can't stay here. And he was fair to his staff because he Tom would share his camp money with his coaches equally. Yeah. Whereas, a lot of those guys put their name on the camp. They give the pep talk in the morning and then they collect their check and they might give out a little bit. He divided it equally. And
radio show money. Share the
radio. You guys know that. I mean, it's the Tom Osborne radio show, but he did the first one and the last one. And everybody else got to do one and they got paid the same. He made sure they got paid there. They gave out speaking engagements throughout the state. That's why those guys were so beloved, is because they handled all the speaking engagements with them. I mean, it was just an incredibly fair and conscientious work-life balance and decision he made.
Best coaches show ever was when Milt was on and Constantine Dimitrisu's girlfriend called up complaining about why Constantine was never playing. That was a good show.
Please tell me what happened.
Okay.
So Milt's like, well, we evaluate players every day. We watch the metrics, and he's a young man with a lot of
She was livid.
She was not
like, yeah, she was, nobody knew who his girlfriend's, what her name was. Yeah, she was hot, but Milt handled it really, really well. I think Milt kind of thought that she was a fan.
I think Constantine Dimitrisu represented a whole generation of football players who back then rarely played.
Yep.
The Euler brothers, whereas if they had just been born in a different decade,
there was no portal
starters, not just on the spring game teams. I'm talking in the fall.
So speaking of reverence and respect, the guy that we're talking about that's celebrating his 88th birthday today, the other guy that we need to talk about because we have you, JB, is somebody who holds Tom Osborne in high regard. It's been a couple of weeks. You know John better on the floor, off the floor. You guys are truly friends. What were kind of your emotions when you go through a season like this, the way it ended, and then the news that came in January?
Well, it was just a flurry of emotions because it really did take me by surprise. I sent him a text saying just speechless because I thought he'd come back for the Hollywood ending. One at most 2 years. Harper's going to got 2 years left, and Bergen's got 2 years left. Andy's got 2 years left. So everything's ready to go here for that Hollywood ending. And he's 69 in April, and Russ Rose kind of retired when he was 72. But Russ Rose was 72. I mean, John Cook can pass for 62. I mean, so he's in great shape. But you've all heard all the analysis. I think it was Danny's availability that had a lot to do it, which is kind of a mirror image of why Terry Pettit stepped aside when he was less than 60 years old, rather than wait another 2 or 3 years. When he was all set up for a national championship, he knew that waiting would jeopardize the availability of John Cook. I think Coach Cook felt that waiting would jeopardize the availability of Danny Busman, who had a new contract sitting in front of her. And if she signed that new contract, I think she had a little bit of an obligation morally to stick it out a couple of years, not just bail. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But, great legacy, able to leave on his own terms. 7 Final Fours in the last 10 years. He's doing his finest work at the end. Who can say that they're doing their finest work in their late 60s? 7 Final Fours in the last 10 years. So it was just a pleasure. I like this and an honor. I just like to say, as I texted him, I go, thank you for giving me a box seat to the greatest show on Terraflex. So
nice. Nice. There was a moment, and you and I have talked about this, and you can share with all of our viewers and us here. There was a moment where, and I saw it from afar, that it almost looked like he was getting burnout. They were still having success, but he didn't look like he was having fun. And he's a guy, he's a guy that, I mean, he does in a high leverage, high profile situation. John makes it about fun. And a lot of coaches would just know it's not about fun, it's all seriousness. But he finds a way to incorporate that into his day to day. Where was the moment where you think the program shifted to maybe John was being burnt out, maybe didn't have the greatest relationship with the ladies in his program, to it changed where you had this incredible finish of 7 Final Fours in the last 10 years?
Well, up until about 11, 12 years ago, we used to go for a run every day on the road. And I remember in 2010-ish, we were at Texas A&M and went for a run, and we really talked. And because I could tell things weren't quite right. And it was showing on the court. I mean, we were in the midst of a 6-year Final Four drought. And that's when he started making all sorts of changes. And, we got strength coach that's specific to volleyball. We got a psychologist who now is part of the team, and so many other examples of changes he made personally, but also to the culture. And I think that really bore fruit with the arrival of Michaela Fecchi and Kenzie Maloney and Kelly Hunter taking over, et cetera, in 2015. I call that the beginning of the golden age of Nebraska volleyball, 7 Final Fours in 10 years. But what amplified all of it, as he's now said publicly a few times, is the wonder of the 2008 team. That team so overachieved, was so beloved, that, won probably the greatest comeback in the history of the program in Seattle in the regional final, down 9-3 in the 5th, after being down 2-love, reverse sweeping Washington, then having Penn State, a team that had not lost a match, actually had not lost a set the entire year, had them 10-8 in the 5th in Omaha, crowds going absolutely berserk. How do you replicate that? Jordan's final year, how do you replicate that? And so that kind of amplified the feeling like maybe I have experienced the mountaintop, and it's just too elusive. But then he just reinvented himself again. One reason I find him so inspiring personally is that, here he was in, this was 2010. So he would have been, mid 50s, and already had won 2 national championships, and he's reinventing the program, reinventing himself. I think to a lot of us, that can be a bit of an inspiration, but I saw it flip in 2015, but that was the accumulation of 6 years of tough seasons and a lot of hard work.
John Baylor with us here, the Average Joe Sports Show Sunday Live. All right. Hammer the grammar. Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman with the product placement. Chris Schmidt is, we're excited to bring you the Average Joe Sports Show 7 days a week.
How many states are you in?
Oh,
well, we can go through. We're in half of the U.S. right now, based on our.
Gary, let me acquaint Gary with something called the internet. The better question is, how many planets are you on? One.
I was not talking about the Average Joe Sports Show. I was talking about On to College.
That's a better question. That's an excellent question.
Because I was there when this started out of the, what was it, the blue Honda hatchback?
Oh, the Balesmobile. Oh, yeah. Rest in peace. I'd still be driving that with the orange foam coming out of the seats. A freaking 16-year-old didn't plow into the back of it, looking at sprinklers. And the insurance company's like, we'll give you $1,600 for it. I'm like, no. I'll tell you what. You keep the $1,600 and you find me a car that'll start every time I get in it. I don't care how freaking cold it is. It goes 80 miles an hour uphill with all my life's possessions and 2 bikes on the back up the Rockies that gets like 32 miles a gallon. You go find me a car for $1,600. Click. A week later. All right, $2,100. No, I'll tell you what. You keep the $2,100. You go find me a car. The blue book on it was $1,400. They gave me $3,800 finally. I was so torqued. I'm like, I didn't put a knife to you guys and say to insure that 16-year-old. You insured him. And he's watching sprinklers. Freaking, that's the best car ever. All right, so on to college. All right. Freaking loved that car. Have you ever seen an 82? I saw one once in North Lincoln. 82 light blue Honda. I get out of the car, my car, which is a newer vehicle, as if there's progress in automobile manufacturing. And I just wander about this car and I'm like, I miss you. All right. So
Not creepy at all.
currently we created this ACT preparation juggernaut in that vehicle. And now we're up to 27 states and we got about 600 high schools that to use us. So it's good fun. And it allows me to do this, love of Nebraska, Nebraska volleyball and sportscasting on the side. When I was young, I thought to myself, I don't know what I really want to do, but I just want to have fun and make a difference. Mm-hmm. I'm too selfish to not have fun. I'm too selfish to not have. I got to have fun. I got to have some self-indulgence. And then the other things, I got to make a difference. I can't be in the nursing home and what was this all for? And so on to college kind of gives me that opportunity where kids are like, hey, I'm motivated now. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to make a nice jump. So it fills my life with purpose, and I do enjoy it. Thank you.
Can I say something from a parent's perspective?
Oh,
that you juniors, smart,
You saved him.
Well, I mean, Junior doesn't say a whole lot about much. All right. He's a teenager. He's mute. I mean, he just doesn't.
Male.
Yes. And he's like.
Right-handed.
Yeah, he is. Great slider. Not so much the curve. But he's like, Dad, you never told me John Baylor's an amazing teacher. And this isn't to make you feel all weird. He got a ton out of your class. It helped him incredibly. He decided on Nebraska, but he put the work in, and appreciate your guidance on that, man. I mean that as how proud I am a junior. So
that's a great choice. Well, I got to tell you guys, I care about you. I care about you guys so much that I was supposed to have our weekly family Zoom call about 12 minutes ago. And I sent out a text saying, can we push it back to 8 minutes from now? So I've got 5 more minutes. And I hope you'll have me back. This is good fun.
No, hey, thank you for making and taking time. Absolutely. But no, it's been incredible. But just a thought on JB here. You are somebody that you touched on, you wanting to make a difference. And you've told me a long time ago about just how important teaching is to you and how much you love it. And you love getting up there and inspiring and impacting the next generation. So you were telling me about, when we first met, about how you did some work out in Los Angeles, and then you had some work with Wall Street, and it came back to teaching, which is really cool. That you're just like, hey, I want to spend time around young people and teach.
Thanks. As you can see, that acting career didn't exactly pan out.
Do you still have the headshots though?
Oh, they're on the internet. But
I know.
There was a couple of kids who bring up this headshot. I'm like, oh my goodness, they want me to sign it.
We don't have time, but there is a story of John and myself filming something in his house that he was trying for a gig that Craig Kilborn got.
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh, that's a great story.
You have a demo?
Okay, so a friend of mine, I just moved back to Lincoln. I've been here for 9 months. And a close friend of mine from Los Angeles is like, oh my gosh, they're hiring for this job. I think you'd be great for it. I know you're out of it, all that stuff, but here it is from the Variety magazine. It's a description. I just thought of you. She sent it to me probably by regular mail back then. And Gary's filming. I don't know how. Must have had some sort of Sanyo. And I was filming this thing. I'm sitting at a desk in my bedroom, and I do this requested 5-minute monologue for a show, an anchor position on a show called The Daily Show. And they took a guy by the name of Craig
Kilborn
instead of John Baylor. I still think they messed up. The guy did not work out, if you realize it. Anyway, I found that video and showed it to my team. We got about 20 team members at Monty College College a couple of years ago. Racy.
Yeah.
Hey, one final one, because a couple of people are asking. Once we make the transition from John Cook to DBK, which I think she's going to be fantastic, what kind of a fall will it be with this team?
Danny Busboom Kelly is just so authentic, so relatable, and 8th grade phenomenal volleyball recruits love her, and their parents love her, and players who are for her love her. I remember I spoke with Ellie Glock at the Final Four, and when I asked her, like, how great what are your feelings about Coach Kelly? Just like so almost reverential, just so grateful. So I think we're in really good hands, and no players for the moment have left, which is wonderful. Trent Dilfer was on a podcast with Dan Meskey, the new coach of Louisville, and Trent Dilfer's daughter played for Louisville. And he says something like, we had visited all these other coaches. We're trying to figure out where Tori is going to go play. And within 10 minutes of speaking with Coach Busboom, I knew we were in the right place, and this is where she was going to play. So pretty strong testimonial.
JB, we love you, brother. Thanks for making time for this. We'll let you get to the family Zoom call, and thanks for being a part of the Average Joe Sports Show, man.
You guys are the best. Thanks.
Thanks for handling the grammar.
Thanks, Garrett. Thanks, Smitty. Take care, you guys.
All right, there he is, John Baylor. That was good times. That was throwback, fellas, as we've all had a chance to spend time with him, and that was a good time. That was fun.
Everybody in our business, whenever you mention John Baylor's name, everybody in the local media sportscasting world has a John Baylor impersonation that they follow up with. Hey, John Baylor's going to be on the show tomorrow. Hey, on to college.
Yeah, I was really, really lucky because at Broadcast House in Lincoln, at one time it was Jim Rose, John, myself, John Bishop was there as well. We had a hell of a run at Broadcast House, but that's where John and I became, when John moved from California and I just moved to Lincoln, that's when we became friends. And I tell you, one quick story about doing volleyball on the radio. John had a lot of challenges initially because nobody was doing volleyball on radio except for Nebraska. And so getting phone lines and location, back then there wasn't the Ethernet. So you had to get like a real dial-up line. And, people are like, I don't know about this volleyball on the radio. Now, I bet there's at least 100 Division I programs that have volleyball on the radio, but he's the godfather. I mean, he's the best I've ever heard do volleyball on the radio. I mean, I can't imagine a Nebraska volleyball season without John Baylor as the voice. He's been incredible in that role. People talk about Terry Pettit and John Cook and furthering the sport in this state. He won't ever admit it, but I'll give credit to John because his voice on the airwaves across the state, calling Nebraska volleyball, where some people would rather listen to the radio than the TV, he's done a great job. But yeah, at the beginning, people weren't doing volleyball. It was just, it wasn't a sport that was like, okay, how do you do this on radio? And John has done it to an unbelievable level. And there's a lot of schools that have followed suit. And that's a big reason, big reason why is because Nebraska was the first and John was the first, just as a request from Terry Pettit. They were on the radio before John started doing it. But Terry Pettit was like, can we take this to another level? And he said, certainly. So that's when I lost my Lincoln Stars partner.
Well, he is, appointment listening for sure. And you're right on about the, JB wants us to do a little editing, but I got lucky.
I thought the joke at the time when we were filming in his bedroom was funny.
Yes. Okay. Well, exactly. JB and Billy D, man, it was awesome out of college to get hired by you guys and Charlie Meyer and the Salt Dogs. You guys take me under your wing, and that's kind of my connection, Sharpie, to.
Yeah, we had the two OGs of Salt Dog baseball on the radio.
Yeah, well, we'll have a panel discussion, John and I, at some point with with people at some type of consortium on campus. We'll talk about the Salt Dog baseball on the radio in the early days.
Those trips to Winnipeg.
Yeah. Peanut Williams, come on down. Yeah. So we meant to do the shout outs a long time ago. We will do them now. Tuck is in, can't get enough. Uncle Larry here. Kobe, good to have you. We have Coach Brandon, says no free shout out Sundays. That's been tabled for today, Coach Brandon. Arlo is here, the other Dave. Walter says we're one day closer to spring, which means golf and beer. You all right, Walter? David says good morning. Corn Raider checks in. David Jenner is here. Chris comes in. Top of the morning. Steven here. Good to have you, Steven. Justin checks in, as well as Brian. Brian, Game Dog, and Captain both here. Appreciate both of you. Andrew is here. And we have some more shout outs to get to in a little bit. Sharpie.
Hold on. Noticeably absent from the shout outs and in the chat. Elijah Herbal is in Phoenix and presumably laying in the bunker at the 16th at the Waste Management. And we've not heard back from him yet. So Elijah's absent today.
He is. He right now, Elijah, he had a little bit of spring training fun yesterday, it looks like, with the Cubs. Baseball, Cubs, White Sox. He got to attend that, had a Chicago dog and a beer. I have not texted him yet to ask how many beers he had yesterday. Brent is in. Matthew is in. Good to have you, fellas, checking in on the stream with the Average Joe Sports Show. Sharpie, this taking the trash out thing is continuing to explode. You got a chance to call another Mavs win last night. You had some pro wrestlers come in, tag team flavor, and it's all the buzz the last several weeks, but it was also part of Sports Center yet again this morning.
I saw. It's an unbelievable journey compared to, where Nebraska or Omaha men's basketball has been. Last night, they clinched a share of the Summit League for the first time in program history, and they've been Division I for 14 years at the basketball level. And the whole kicking the trash can has just taken off. So last night, the Outrunners from AEW, and I don't follow enough of AEW, but I'm aware of them. So this is how this started. As this has gotten attention, Omaha, after a win, kicks a trash can because it started when an assistant coach didn't like the vibe of the team before a game in the locker room. And so he kicked a trash can, and they went out and won that game. And it's become a tradition after every win that Omaha kicks a trash can. And it's turned into this professional wrestling moves on the trash can. So Omaha reached out to Tony Khan, who runs AEW, and he went nuts. This is the greatest idea. Now they're coming to Omaha next month. So he thought, you know what, we'll bring a couple of wrestlers to a basketball game, and then they also can promote that we're going to be in Omaha in March. And here's the cool thing about it. He said, we'll pay for everything. We'll pay for the flights. They had a talent representative with them last night. So there were 3 of them, but he said, we'll pay for the flights. We'll pay for all the food. Omaha said, we'll throw in some hotels. Okay. So they flew to Omaha, and they met the team yesterday. Now I got to tell you, so I haven't spent a lot of time around professional wrestlers, but I do like professional wrestling. They were in character. So like when you're introducing yourself to them, it's like normal. It's like you're introducing yourself to a normal person. But then when they're around the team, they went into character, and they sat courtside last night. And the chancellor of UNO, Chancellor Lee, and she is fantastic. They're sitting, they're dressed in their Zubaz pants, and they got fanny packs, and, they got greased up bodies. They're eating popcorn and hot dogs, sitting courtside, sitting next to the chancellor. It was a great sight. Mike Schaefer was directly behind them.
You're right. Yeah.
Mike and his wife Shelby came to the game. And so I was like, man, could you see anything with those guys? But after the game, they did their skit in the locker room that has gotten all the attention and is all over Sports Center. And, it's got, 75,000 views on AEW's website. So it's a lot of fun. This is a fun team. They're really good. And they got a shot. They got to win their conference tournament. But having the number 1 seed, which they can solidify next Saturday by beating Oral Roberts, would be a hell of an accomplishment for this program that preseason was 8th in a 9-team conference. So it's been a lot of fun, and hopefully this ride is a long way from being over.
So was yesterday the biggest single sports day in Omaha history?
Hey,
Now,
it might have
granted,
been.
the Outrunners, okay, it's not exactly Baron von Raschke and Mad Dog Vachon, but nevertheless, but to do that
Turbo
and have them
Magnum.
there, and the show has the good ending, but then to do what they did at LSU,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's stunning.
Yeah, Nebraska baseball, Nebraska baseball, just like all the teams in the North, spend a majority of the time on the road. And Nebraska's or Omaha's schedule is a little bit difficult, more than others. But yeah, they had a 3-game set at LSU. Yesterday, I'm getting texts in the 5th inning that LSU doesn't have a hit. And then Omaha scores 5 in the 7th. And you're like, they're up 5-0 at LSU. LSU still doesn't have a hit. LSU didn't get a hit until the 8th. It got a little shaky in the 9th, but yeah, winning at LSU 5-4 in the middle game of the 3-game set. Yeah, it was a pretty good day. Omaha Athletics and hockey is doing really well as well. Omaha Athletics, a lot of people doubted about making the move to Division I, and there's still some of the carryover of wrestling and football being eliminated, not as much as it used to be, and that has a lot to do with the head basketball coach used to play football here. Adrian Dow, the athletic director, who is going places, he is kind of bridged with the wrestlers and football of honoring them. Omaha Athletics is in a good spot. Trev built the facilities. They have a wonderful baseball and softball complex, of course, Baxter Arena, and that's what, Trev was big on facilities. And Adrian has come in, and they've got a culture of winning, and they're doing a lot of winning right now, and it's been fantastic. I'm just fortunate enough to be part of the ride.
Well, it's
Yeah,
been
big day.
incredible to see what's gone on, Sharpie, and excited for you, man.
Well, I'm hoping, hey guys, we have a moment here, and I don't think people can overlook this. We have a chance 3 weeks from today that Omaha, Nebraska, and Creighton all will be announced in the men's NCAA tournament. How about that?
That'd be awesome. I
Did it in
don't.
volleyball.
Yeah, no, I
Yep.
know that's a good
Yep,
call.
2 years ago, and they did it in baseball.
For as we wind it down for the Sunday Live, I think tomorrow night's got to happen for Nebraska basketball to I think they win tomorrow night and they get one more. I think that takes a lot of pressure off of having to do deeper work in Indy for the Big Ten basketball tournament. Listen, can they lose tomorrow night close, still win the other 2 home games? Yeah. And then they got to go get one at Ohio State, don't you think?
Yeah.
That might be the play-in game at Ohio State.
Yeah.
You look at the Big Ten standings. I don't have it memorized like I usually do on a Sunday because I was preparing for John to be on. But take a look at the Big Ten standings, and there is a lot of middle of the road, teams that are just going to get run over because they're dancing on the center line. And you can't do that. I think there's probably 10 teams in the Big Ten that if things fall right for the bottom 6, they're going to get into the tournament. And Nebraska and Ohio State, I mean, Indiana is actually flirting in the same neighborhood as Nebraska and Ohio State.
And they've got a huge game today.
They've had a disastrous season. Woodson's not coming back. Nebraska beat Ohio State here. I mean, they got to beat Michigan. If they beat Michigan, I think they're in. But if you can sweep Ohio State, a team that's going to be it's a play-in game, I think the loser of that game is probably out of the conversation, unless there's a lot of other teams that are just, having rock fights and knocking each other out. But you go, I think you're in if you beat Michigan, and then you got to sweep the rest of the way in the regular season if they don't beat Michigan. So I don't know what the Big Ten's going to get.
I think they're supposed to get 10.
I know, but if you look at 8, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and even 11 and 12, it's just they're all there in the same neighborhood.
I'll say this: the Oregon win on the road yesterday One of us called that in the Friday forecast. I wish I would have gotten to Warhorse for it, but I had a feeling Dana had his guys ready. You have probably the hottest team in the Big Ten has been Wisconsin, where they've just been mauling people. Huge road win for Dana in Oregon. That punches their ticket, I think.
But you think about
Illinois they're fading horrible.
Well,
Illinois,
and they've got injuries, and I used to think they had the highest upside, but they've had injuries, and I mean that was a bad night last night at MSG against Duke. But think about the Big Ten. So let's look at Nebraska. The thing about the feeling around Nebraska, and I looked at a lot of brackets this morning, and Nebraska's still sitting at a 10, but people are inching them closer to being on the bubble on the wrong side because that Penn State loss was on Wednesday. Nebraska hasn't played since then, and it's kind of just sat, and people have analyzed it. But think about this. Nebraska goes to Evanston last Sunday. They're down 20. They come back and win, and we're like, whew, because Northwestern is missing 2 of their top 3 scores. They're not very good. Northwestern goes into Columbus, and at one point they led by 28, and they blow out Ohio State, who's playing for their lives. Then look at yesterday. Nebraska has an awful loss at Penn State, but it wasn't a loss that kicked them out of the tournament because the bubble is, Penn State goes into Williams Arena where Minnesota is playing pretty well right now for Minnesota standards, and Penn State wins. Mm-hmm. It's a tough league to figure out. That's why it's so important on your home floor. Like tomorrow night, Nebraska needs, and we don't know what we're going to get from Michigan because Michigan kind of got bullied for the first time this year by Michigan State. And Nebraska isn't equipped to do the same thing against them, but that's a really good Michigan team that's smarting from a 13-point loss on Friday night on their home floor. What are they going to be like at the beginning of the game? I think the crowd's going to have to be a big factor tomorrow night for Nebraska. And Nebraska is going to have to play hard from start to finish. They can't have those ups and downs that they have. We can't be hearing that Fred had to get after him at halftime. I mean, Nebraska's going to have to play one of their bigger games because if you win a game like that, that's almost lock status. You would need to add one and avoid a landmine. But if you beat Michigan at home tomorrow night, you can kind of start to take that lock and put it in where you're in the tournament. But it's going to be a challenge tomorrow night. And we don't know if the Turkish man's going to play.
Got to be 3-1 in your final 4.
Right? Yeah, and I also think, and maybe if you don't win Schmidt against Michigan, it's avoid the landmines that are Minnesota and Iowa at home.
Yeah, you can't lose at home. But I think with the Penn State loss, and you're right, it is what team shows up on a given day. But with Penn State, they the timing of the loss, the amount of the loss, the fact you got ran out of the gym is going to weigh heavily unless Penn State kind of flips the script. Maybe they finish strong to make you look a little better. I don't know, but bottom line is you've already misstepped twice this year against teams that you should have beat with Rutgers, right, at home, and USC. You have some impressive wins as well, but yeah, it's not even up for debate. You've got to go 2-1 with your remaining 3 home games, and you got to be right there against Ohio State. And if you go 2-2, I think you got to get 1 and play well in Indy, just because
you don't want to put it in the hands of the committee with a bad taste,
especially with as strong as the SEC is this year. I mean, they're going to be lobbying for 48 teams.
That Penn State loss is the albatross is the way in which it transpired. If they'd lost 77-72, on the back end of a roadie from Northwestern, not everything is AI and algorithm driven. There is some common sense when it comes to the selection. And you can look at it and go back into that roadie from Evanston to Happy Valley and set 5 points, something like that. Kind of understandable, but to be blown out from start to finish plus 20, that stands out. Even if you put up Team A, Team B, Team C, and you don't put the name on there, you can still look at it and go, you should not have lost that way over there.
Oh, yeah.
That's the albatross.
Yeah.
And just continues the season that we're going on.
Yeah, Bill, and you're absolutely right. And just the way they played. I mean, the body language was bad. They got in early foul trouble, and it was almost surrender Cobra. But this is what Nebraska basketball is they're day to day, game to game. you don't know who they're gonna, who's gonna show up tomorrow night, but they do play much different at home. It's just they're gonna need a really good effort because that's a good team that's coming in here tomorrow night. And Michigan, the last thing Michigan wants is to have back-to-back losses where you can make a case, hey, Michigan State's in sole possession of first place. I get it, but losing in Lincoln this time of the year when you're battling for position, I think Dusty May will have his guys ready to go. This will be one of the bigger challenges for Nebraska, but the reward is I think you can start talking about a lock if you are able to pull an upset tomorrow night.
Nebraska can play as good as they've played in a while. Think back to that first half against Oregon. They can play that well tomorrow night, and it may not matter because Michigan's just that talented, that good. And you can handle a loss where you just get beat by a better team. What you can have is the antics of, do we want to be here or not, right? Do they want to come out and attack it the right way? That's what's been so maddening for Fred and company with, they're fighting for their lives right now. There needs to be the urgency, the give a damn level, and there's the formula. You play defense, you win.
Yep.
You take smart shots, you win. So it'll be good. We'll be ready to talk about it again. The Average Joe Sports Show, Sunday live. Like and subscribe. Tell a buddy. We'd appreciate that. Spotify, iTunes, also like and subscribe with the podcast. And 7 days a week for you, it's the Average Joe Sports Show. Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Chris Schmidt. Big thanks to our special guest, John Baylor. So we talked a ton.
Happy birthday, Tom Osborne.
Yes, T.O. Blow those candles
What do you think he's doing for his birthday today?
Oh, I think.
Well, it's a nice day, Gary. Might go out and do some fishing. Kind of depends, and you spend some time with the family.
Hey, I saw him at the Outland. He looked good. His voice was stronger. He was in really good spirits. I think we're all kind of, and I'll use the word blessed, that we've all had like interaction with him, like more than just, hey, Coach Osborne, my name is Gary, I live in Omaha. He's one of a kind. He is an absolute legend. That is as John was alluding to, when he goes around the country and people go, that coach, he's a fabric of Nebraska. And happy birthday to him. And the thing, I do know this because when Damon and I did a show, Damon being somebody who at times caused T.O. some angst, so Damon would always text T.O. on his birthday, and T.O. texts, and it was just funny. Like, Bill, you were doing an impersonation of, that's kind of how T.O. texts back to say thank you for wishing him a happy birthday. It was kind of funny, but he's a very simple man.
Hey, I'll tell one more that has always endeared me and the kind of guy. So, Tom's last contract at Nebraska was like $125,000 a year when Rick Neuheisel's was making $1.1 million, right? Boy wonder. And
yep.
So, but Tom made more money, and I don't mean to speak out of class on this, but the Pepsi deal, he made the TV show, was lucrative for him, and he would bonus people out of that money to the crew at Husker Vision. If he would ask Jeff after the season, go, so okay, now who all was involved in the show and what did they do? And then he would write a check, and we had students back in the day who would come in and, it would help edit the show with all that was Kirk Hartman and Mike Hodges, and they would be at the Husker Vision studio if we were on the road, or they'd be downstairs. They edited the show together, but we'd have students who would come in and have to do some stuff in post-production. And one of the jobs was that when the show was done and we had the 3/4 or the beta tape, they had to take it to the bus station so it could go to North Platte for airing in the morning. And then they would have to drive the tape up to KMTV3 in Omaha and physically give it to them so they could air the show at 9 o'clock in the morning. So you have college students who have a job on Saturday night to come in, usually, after midnight or late in the evening, waiting for these tapes to be edited so they would run the show. Well, at the end of the season, you know, Tom would write a little bonus check to everybody who was part of the team and that helped put a show together, including those college students. And I'm thinking, if I'd had a check with Tom Osborne's autograph on it, I probably would frame it instead of cashing it. But I've always thought that was just an incredible gesture to make sure that everybody on the team, the Husker Vision team, was respected and rewarded out of his own appreciation and gratitude for the effort they put in.
That's the way to end it. That is cool. And that's the guy. You know it. Sharpie, you're muted, partner.
Thanks for sharing that. That's who Coach Osborne is.
Yeah.
For
You know,
sure.
and that kind of generosity and the caring for people, you know, eventually led to teammates.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Which, right with what he did as the head football coach in Nebraska, you could say that his impact in the state is, you know, teammates. Teammates is everywhere.
It's well put. Good way to end it. Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Chris Schmidt, Elijah back with us next week. Big thanks to John Baylor for spending time with us here on the Sunday Live Average Joe Sports Show. We'll holler at you next time. Everyone have a good rest of your Sunday.